Welcome to today's show, Legacy Living, Make Your Life Count. I'm your host, Dr. Gloria Burgess, passionate, inspirational speaker, author, poet, and entrepreneur. Good morning, and welcome to Legacy Living, Make Your Life Count. Today is Wednesday, November 21st. I want to give a big thank you to those of you who are listening in today, and here's a great big shout out to all of you listening around the world. I'm delighted and so very grateful that you tuned in. I sure hope you're enjoying a fabulous day today and that you're having a fantastic week, because you know what? In the grand song of the universe, life is very, very short. It's short, sweet, and very precious. So I hope you're making a difference in your own life, because when you do, you also make a difference in somebody else's life. Now, a lot of folks want to make their life count for something, and they ask me, Dr. Gloria, how do you do that? Well, it's very simple, very simple. You make your life count day by day, step by step, moment by moment, every single day, 365, 24/7. That's what Legacy Living, Make Your Life Count is all about. You can learn more about Legacy Living, Make Your Life Count by visiting the Gloria Burgess website. That's Gloria, B as in boy, URGESS.com. The Gloria Burgess website. Again, that's GloriaBurgess.com, or by visiting Facebook, and that's facebook.com/DR for Doctor, GloriaBurgessPhD/. Today, I want to share with you about what life is like growing up and living in two worlds. This topic is very special to me, not only because I grew up in two worlds myself, it's also near and dear because I have a special friend I want you to meet today. My friend also understands what it's like growing up and living in two worlds. My very special guest is Hannah Nguyen, and today she's going to share about her story with us. Hannah's humble story begins in Vietnam, where she was born. She will also share about her family's transition from her home in Saigon to growing up in the United States of America, as well as some of the ways she's dealt with and navigated these two very different worlds. Hannah was born 10 years after the Vietnam War, then moved with her family to the United States when she was 9 years old. She says growing up in America in a low-income immigrant family brought with it many emotions: loneliness, excitement, fear, confusion, sadness, courage, and bravery. As you listen to Hannah's story, she will share what it's like for her to transition to an entirely new country at the tender age of 9 years old. She'll also share what it was like to jumpstart into adulthood when she was 13 years old. At that time in young Hannah's life, her family welcomed a new baby into their family, a baby boy her parents named Philip. So, who is Hannah Nguyen? Well, she's an amazing person who is absolutely passionate about people and the power of education to change her own and others' lives. Hannah is a passionate, lifelong learner. She's also a trusted friend. I met Hannah almost 10 years ago, and if I had to choose just one word to describe her, I'd say that she is inspired. She's also a dedicated, loving spirit who has a heart for helping others. In her own words, she describes her journey thus: as coming into myself. Coming into myself. I just love that. Now, later in the show, Hannah will share what coming into myself means to her in terms of navigating cultural differences of her two worlds and her journey of seeking her self-identity. As you listen to Hannah's story, you will come to know her as a person who makes a difference in her own life, in her family, and in her community as she devotes herself to serving others. As I said earlier, to me, Hannah is very inspiring. When you hear her story, you'll learn why she's so fired up about making a difference, about making an impact on the world in this way. We are truly blessed to have her as one of our honored guests on my show. In many ways, in her love for people and serving others, Hannah pulls together many threads of what my own life and work are all about. In fact, you've heard me talk about these threads and themes on this show. These are the themes of gratitude, love, service, generosity, courage, compassion, hope, and possibility. Can I just tell you something? Hannah and I had a marvelous conversation, and I'm so excited to have this amazing, life-changing person with us today. This is going to be an incredible show. You don't want to miss a single word of it. So, grab your earbuds, put on your walking shoes, or grab yourself a cup of tea or coffee or a nice cool glass of water, wherever you are in the world, right? Pull up your footstool, relax in your favorite chair, and don't forget your pen and notepad, because you're going to want to take notes today. We're going to have a wonderful time. Okay? Now, before I jump into today's show, I just want to take a moment to welcome you. If you're just joining us, I'm your host, Dr. Gloria. This is Legacy Living, Make Your Life Count. I'd like to extend a special welcome to those of you who are joining my show, or if you're joining Talk Network Radio for the very first time. You are in for a real treat. I'm excited to have you listening in today, and I'm deeply honored that you've allowed me to be part of your day so you can be inspired by the ideas and resources to make your life count. Today's program is all about two worlds, and our specific focus is about one person's journey of navigating those very different worlds and how she continues to live her life with a heart for serving others. As you've heard me say many times, how we live is how we show up. It's how we do everything, right? Hannah, I just want to thank you for joining us today and for being my very special guest on my show. Would you say your name for our listeners and just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh, Gloria, thank you so much for having me, for inviting me. This is certainly an opportunity for me to grow and learn. My name is Hannah Nguyen. I am Vietnamese American. I was born in Vietnam. I moved here to the U.S. with my family in 1994. I've been living here in the Puget Sound since then. I've grown up through an experience of a low-income immigrant family, and my journey of integrating into this culture and my family's journey of integrating into this culture has been one of many ups and downs and many emotions, including fear, excitement, courage to step out and to learn something new and adapting to culture and language. So as a young adult, growing up, I always been told to be responsible and more or less to say, grow up. I think recently I've been realizing that it's more about coming into myself rather than grow up. It's coming into. So this is my story of coming into myself.
Okay. Well, thank you, Hannah. And I love that notion of coming into myself. I know that your story will just inspire so many people today. And I wonder if you might tell us a little bit about your childhood. You say that you were born in Vietnam. And so could you tell us about your childhood there, your family, and, what that was like for you?
Right. I work for a big corporation, and when people ask me to say, tell us about yourself, I kind of scramble in my head, and I'm thinking, what about myself? So I always find a place to go back, and that place was in Vietnam, where I was born, a little bit outside of Saigon. 10 years after the Vietnam War, my dad was in the South Vietnamese Army. After the war, he was captured, and he was imprisoned for 6 years. After he returned, my older brother was a young toddler, and years later, they had me. So growing up in Vietnam, my memories was not of the war. I remember the festivities. I remember the Lunar New Year. I remember the community growing up, and it wasn't just my mom and my dad and my older brother, but then there was also my aunts and uncles and cousins and the neighbors dogs, just the whole village. It's very communal. And my memories were just filled with happiness until when I was about 9 years old. Our family had the opportunity to move to the U.S. based on my dad's status of his service to the Army during the war. And that was, to a 9-year-old, that was an abrupt change, I think, to say the least. So my story changed or begun, whichever way I want to look at it.
Uh-huh. Yeah, well, thank you. I can only imagine what it must be like for you, Hannah, to leave behind so many memories, and sounds like pretty wonderful memories of being with your family, extended family, your I call it my personal village, right? The people who poured into you. Can you share a little bit with our listeners who are all over the world, and some of them have similar circumstances, different countries, different nationalities, but similar circumstances. What kinds of things that you take with you when you left Vietnam, and what did you leave behind?
I left a lot behind. I left the tangible things, the people. I left everyone behind except my core family, my parents, and my older brother. Mm-hmm. I left my village behind. I left the food behind. Mm-hmm. I left the firecrackers for the Lunar New Year behind. And I left that little girl who pretended to be a teacher behind.